Hello everybody, and thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. This is an interview I did with Tarn Adams, aka Toady1, co-founder of Bay 12 Games and the programmer of Dwarf Fortress. This interview took place on February 11th, 2021 at 3 p.m. Pacific on my Twitch channel. This is the archive and slightly edited version. If you want to find the full uncut version, there is a link in the description, which is the VOD on my Twitch channel itself. It's a little bit longer and has a little bit more hiccups in it, but you'll get the full experience along with the chat replay. Here on YouTube, however, you'll get a little bit of a cut down version, and it'll be a little bit cleaner. So thank you very much to all of my patrons for making all of this stuff possible, allowing me to do this full-time as a creator on the internet. Thank you so much to everybody who supports Bay 12 Games on Patreon and through their PayPal and keeps them funded so they can keep making this awesome video game. And I hope that you enjoy the interview. I'll see you again at the end. Alrighty, well, we are now unmuted and we're back. So welcome back, great Toady1. And there's a cat doing cat things.
Geez, Scamps.
I think this is perfect.
Goodness.
It's the best way to start this.
The modem is literally under attack right now. He's pulled the plug once today and is just, yeah. So I'm leaned over in my chair. If my volume goes down a little bit, I don't have a mic on the headset. It's going into my laptop, so my distance will change occasionally as I'm trying to prevent this animal from causing too much trouble.
I mean, cats, like, assaulting computer rigs is just kind of like a constant state of cats. So this is to be expected, frankly.
Yeah, it's nothing but trouble over here. But he can pull the cord, which is annoying. Yes. Well, yes. So yeah, I'll be in and out maybe. Or maybe everything will be fine. We'll see.
Fingers crossed. Cat gives us like an hour-ish of time where nothing too important gets unplugged, and we get to have a nice little chat. So it's been a couple of months since we last spoke. A new release has come out since then with a bunch of balance changes, but before we dive into the list of questions that I've curated from various places on the internet, how's things? How's the new year been for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, the new year was interesting for everybody in this country and everywhere. So that was fun, and but the I mean, we're still sheltering from disease and all that kind of thing. It's leaning over here to push the cat away from the modem, and yeah, it's not much different than it was before, really. The vaccines are slowly rolling out. My parents have been vaccinated. So that's something.
Yeah, it's all small victories. I mean, not much has really changed, I think, since June last year, which is when we did the first one of these. Like, I've obtained a bookshelf, and my record collection has grown, but that's kind of about all that's changed. I'm slowly amassing this collection of houseplants and slowly losing my mind.
Yeah, I'm being slow-mo evicted from this apartment, so I have to leave in July.
Oh no.
And yeah, they got new management, and they just kind of slowly pushed everyone out. Because they want to refurbish and raise the rents on whoever's going to be moving in after me. So
I guess they want to fix the porch.
Yeah, well, they didn't do that. I don't know if they know about it anymore, if that got lost in the... Yeah, who knows? I don't care. It's not my apartment for much longer, so... as long as they don't charge me for it, which they might try to do, but whatever. Everything will be fine. I mean, there's places that open up around here. I'm not worried about finding a new place. It is a little stressful to move if I'm not vaccinated by July. But, I mean, I gotta go, so... That's it.
Yeah, moving is no fun. I have a few friends who've had to move in the past year, and it's just like every time I hear about that happening, it just stresses me the heck out. It's like I'm stressed for you. And,
yeah.
Moving.
Yeah, no, this is the longest I've ever lived in a place, like tying with where I grew up. So I've been here for 12, 13 years now. And I guess that is a record. So it's not the easiest place to move out of just because there's crap, right? There's just crap everywhere. but I've already got my boxes, and I'm just slowly trying to get the place together, so I don't have to stress out later.
Yeah. Well, hopefully moving goes smoothly, and it is what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Fortunately, I won't be moving. Like, I mean, if I move a town, it'll be a town over or something. I'm not like moving to another state or country or anything, so
Yeah. I mean,
it's it's all right.
yeah. But I do have a bunch of questions related to this video game you might have heard of called Dwarf Fortress. So,
Yes, yes.
um, the
Shameful.
recently a new version of this video game was released, and there along with that came a bunch of balance changes. And out of the balance changes, I've seen kind of responses from both ends: people who are very happy for the changes, and people that are a little bit sad about the changes, specifically regarding stress. So stress has kind of been kind of moved towards keeping dwarves very happy all the time. And for me personally, I like managing a little bit of anxiety, I guess, in my fortresses. And I know there's a few people who kind of agree with me. Granted, there's also a lot of people that are on the complete other end where they're just like, everything is perfect now. So I'm kind of curious, what's your opinion on the current state of stress in 47.05? Like, what do you think about it currently?
Well, yeah. I mean, I haven't seen enough about that particular version, the newest version, to know that whether or not the changes actually took in the ways that we wanted them to, and so forth. So it's a little. I mean, I can't quite comment on it, but just
Okay.
as in terms of what we were going for, like the problem was that, as far as I could tell, we had these really, really messed up stress issues kind of before stress existed, back with the old tantrum spirals and so forth. And then sometime around when we added poison and alcohol, like the inebriation and so forth, there was a bug for some years where the dwarves couldn't get stressed out because they were permanently happy once they had their first drink. And that's kind of set up, I think, the community to think that the stress was not supposed to be part of the game or something like that. So when we fixed that, and then compounding with a bunch of kind of weird stress problems, like the rainfall memory thing, and the way that the bodies worked, and just kind of a variety of things that I'd say that kind of fail a realism test in a way. That there was suddenly a lot of stress problems, more than people were used to, and so we kind of we're adjusting against that. I mean, we want sometimes dwarves to be stressed out. We want dwarves to have trouble. It's part of the game. And I think there's a contingent maybe coming out of that alcohol euphoria group that don't think of it as part of the game at all. Basically, don't want stress to happen unless they walk away from the keyboard for 2 hours or something like that. And yeah, I mean, but it's something you should be able to deal with. I think people get frustrated when there's a dwarf that's unfixable. I mean, I argue for narrative purposes there should be dwarves that are unfixable, but I also think that if the narrative isn't strong, then that you can't really make that argument, right? You can't say like, well, that dwarf was rained on, therefore they should be unfixably depressed for the rest of their life, which wasn't like a problem, right?
Yeah.
So when they have these recurring memories, right? It's like the recurring memories that kind of break dwarves forever based on like their stress vulnerability and their personalities and stuff. So I think, I mean, if we want to get back into the thing where you're sort of managing stress overall and using food and things and friendships and so forth, and can get a good idea of what's going on in the fortress and why dwarves are stressed out and what you might do about it, then I think that'll lead us to a place in between somehow where it could actually work for more people. Um, that Yeah, I mean but just having that initial buy-in on that you will lose dwarves is, I think, uh, I mean, that might be a little bit too much for some people. In that case, you can mod the game, to just get rid of it.
Yeah. The kind of sentiment that I've seen the most often is pretty well highlighted by a question that was submitted by someone who frequents my chat named Freskins. And his question was worded simply: currently, I feel the balance of the game has taken a turn for simplicity. Is there a midway point where feelings and outdoor enjoyment could maybe cause the gameplay to be less simplistic? Because currently he hasn't had a single problem with a tantrum, spiral, or any kind of drunken fights, and it doesn't feel like a group of drunken dwarves anymore. Instead, it just kind of feels like a group of really happy dwarves. And that's kind of the main issue that I'm seeing the most, is referenced it as it just feels like it's easy mode now instead of like an exciting mess of dwarves to manage, you know?
Yeah, but I'm not sure that you could manage them before, right? I mean, like, you couldn't use food for any purpose, right? It didn't work. If they weren't eating like fried anole tails, they weren't happy with their food.
Yeah.
So it's bad. I mean, it's all broken. I mean, and so I think if I fixed I didn't fix them all, but if I fixed a bunch of these issues, and then suddenly, yeah, I mean, it's going to swing in that direction. It puts us in a position where hopefully we can unbuggily balance it out a little bit. Yeah. But I mean, you can't balance on bugs. It's just not. It's not kind of future proof. So I guess, I mean, I'd have to see more of what people say, because one data point's not enough, but especially because some of those bar fights shouldn't depend on stress at all. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. You'll see what happens there, but and what happens when we get into because a lot of the stress issues were also being reported against like 30 and 40-year forts, right? Which is not something I have the ability to test myself. Not in a natural environment. I mean, you can fake it, but it's just not good enough.
I couldn't. I have a 153-year-old fort that has almost no stress issues. So
was that started in 4705?
That was started in the previous version. I wouldn't have enough hours to get it done.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We can't actually, talk about that. I guess the fact that you could pull an old. I mean, when the before the new version dropped, was the fort in trouble with stress issues and so forth?
I haven't moved it over to the new version yet. I'm still rolling on the old.
Oh, okay. So well, then that's not. I mean, that's not even. I guess. What, did you just get lucky then, or something? I mean, it's I don't know.
Just very careful.
Yeah. Well, do you just not let them outside to have rain thoughts and things like that, or
the whole fortress is technically outdoors. It's a giant hole in the ground, and they get rained on all the time, and they're generally fine. I'd say maybe 1 in 50 dwarves I lose due to rain, and then the rest of them are just fine.
Okay. So you have lost dwarves. Yes. There are stress problems. Okay. Yes.
Just nothing game breaking by any stretch.
Yeah. So. Well, okay. So that's where someone else would call that game breaking, right? That's the discussion we're having. It's like that kind of different feeling of things. So yeah, and then it's curious to see, you can't really move it over to the new version, and because it doesn't root out their old memories when you do that. So it's not. I mean, we'll have to see. Like if people have the same kind of issues, like losing some dwarves like that over 70, 80, 90-year forts, the big ones, then it hasn't really changed. And I mean, I expect that to still sometimes happen when, hopefully, if it's like all their relatives die in the siege or something, and they're stress vulnerable, then they are a casualty of the fort, and maybe not. Like the thing is, if you really pamper them now, maybe there is some hope. I mean, that's kind of the idea with the food changes and the friendship changes, and being able to complain to your friends, and a lot of those kind of little things like that. Like, I mean, it's not a bad story. Not a bad story for that dwarf. I'd be happy enough with that. It'd be great if you can kind of have some tantrums and then pull people back. That's kind of the balance we're probably looking for.
I think that the changes to the way food works in the new version is actually kind of fantastic. It's really nice to just see them actually happy about food, instead of like, no matter what you do, unless you just happen to get a dwarf that only wants to eat plump helmets, it's like, wow, you're actually happy. What is this madness? But I personally feel that difficulty-wise, the game has kind of swung in the other direction a little bit. Granted, there's a lot of people out there who disagree with me on that, so I might be in the minority, but that's just kind of how me and some of the people that I see talking about the game most days feel in the current state, which, don't change it specifically for us. I'll say that. But like,
well, I'd rather change it in the ways that we're planning to change it
yeah.
when we get out of the Steam release process, which is
Mm-hmm.
like the better sieges, more finishing up the villain stuff, and then I mean it'd be nice to think about problems that were narratively interesting rather than simply mood maintenance on a fort that isn't experiencing any problems. I mean, yeah. I mean, ideally that would be the direction it goes, and that's kind of what we've planned for it. And you know, if the stress makes it easy now, then that just gives us an excuse to put in some harder problems that are external.
Yeah, and also if the stress is easy now, we can just keep playing on the old version until a newer version comes out with cooler stuff. I mean,
yeah, with including graphics or whatever. I mean, it's the next new version. I mean, it's hard to say whether there'll be another bug one before the Steam release, because if the Steam release comes sooner rather than later, then there won't be. But if it comes later rather than sooner, then there probably will be, right? So, yeah, hard to say. Hard to say.
So moving to the future a little bit, I've got a specific question about adventure mode. Well, not super specific, but a question about adventure mode coming in from Lake Bear. And they say, any idea what kind of things we can expect for for Villans Part 2 for adventure mode? Is there going to be any major additions to adventure mode to flesh things out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that happened is that we did the world gen villain stuff, which may be interesting to read about in Legends mode, but it's not gameplay, right? And then we did some little bits with the villains in fort mode with the artifact heists and things, but we didn't really get to the adventure mode plans at all. And then we're like, oh, hey, have to switch gears, Steam release, healthcare, etc. And so we have a lot of plans for adventure mode that we're going to do when we get back to it, which is right afterward when we're doing the villains and army stuff before the magic stuff after the Steam release. And that's the main thing was to be able to investigate villains, like plots. We've got these kind of multi-layer plots in World Gen, and you can't do anything with them. And so we're going to throw something, with that. Come on, buddy. I'm not a scratching post. Why don't you go find a scratching post? That's my arm. It's the same spot. It's bloody, and I want you to stop. Can you stop? Yeah? No? Probably not. Okay. So yeah, this is difficult. So the other part was that due to the way all the kind of structures and things are set up, being a villain yourself was one of the things we wanted to do in adventure mode. Being able to hatch a plot, have the game understand the plot, being able to kind of have subordinate lieutenants and things carry out the plot. And have you kind of open up a whole new mode of gameplay there. And I mean, the way the game works, then you could retire that villain, and then they could be menacing your fortress and that kind of thing in the next game and so forth. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot we want to do.
There's also a question that was submitted by a few people, which is asking about more specific character creation in adventure mode instead of just like pressing reset until you find one you like. Is there any thoughts on implementing something like that?
What do you mean exactly? Because there's a lot of options now.
So when you're building a character, like going through and selecting every single individual piece of the character's description is kind of what I saw a lot of different.
Oh, no, sorry. I mean, sorry, you're talking about like physical description.
Like physical description, yeah.
Because that's like the one part that's missing, right? Because you can do your personality and your values with like sliders and stuff now. So yeah, okay. So if you're talking about physical description, yeah, there was just some trickiness there, or some annoying bits with how the kind of offspring thing works, where you pass the little, I mean, they're not really good genetic markers or anything. They don't work that well, but they kind of have people's hair color is maintained and stuff like that, right? When you pass things down, and the shapes of their face and that kind of thing is roughly maintained when it passes on down.
From Civ, yeah.
Yeah, or from two parents to a child, yeah.
Yeah.
And so not that that's something that happens in adventure mode unless you kind of, I guess, can you even set your preferences right now and then retire? I think it's always undetermined, and we haven't had it set. But in any case, The issue was when you start like actually fiddling with sliders and stuff, it kind of wrecks that part of the code. And so we needed to come up with a way to do it so that it would preserve it, or else just say, well, this character is kind of opting out of being in the chain of life, and is just has then we could set up some kind of sliders. And so it's one of those things where you run into a problem and you're like, we could solve this, but we also have a million other things to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the only barrier.
Yeah. No, I just a million other things to do is a very valid barrier. But on a topic of a million other things to do, how much is left to do in the Steam release is something that I've seen a lot of people asking about. Like, about how far done would you say you are, if you can?
No, I have no idea how to quantify that. I mean, we can really just rattle off what we're working on, right? I mean, and what we have left to do. There's I mean, because you've seen like the workshops, right? I mean, that was the latest little news bit that went up. And so there are the 21 or so, maybe 22, 23, no, there's more than that, 25 or something, other buildings that aren't workshops. And as you know, a lot of them have little annoying particular interfaces. Like here's a bed. What can you do with the bed? You can drag out a room with the bed, assign a dwarf to a bed. What can you do with a chain? It can be a justice chain or not a justice chain. You can drag out a zoo from a cage. You can make statue gardens. A lot of that is similar, right? We really just need to kind of have this room floody thing and a few little option buttons, right? And so that's one chunk, right? These finishing special buildings, finishing like lever linkages, which can't work quite the way the new job interface works. There's just little differences, how it kind of zooms around and shows you what you're linking to, things like that are just slightly different, make the whole thing annoying. And then there's the manager, whatever is going to either take the place of or be the unit job list, the little workshop profile things. There's the C screen is a big one. Figuring out what we're going to do with the military and squad stuff is a big one. And there's a smaller stuff like the minecart hauling routes and burrows. I mean, burrows are either big or small depending on how much you use them in your force, right? I mean, but it's a whole thing. And I'm probably forgetting a few things, but that's kind of fort mode, right? We really do get quite a lot out of just this clicking. I mean, when you get rid of Q, T, K, and V all together, then that's actually kind of playing the game, right? That's a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
So I think we're making good progress there. And those things that I said, I don't know how long they're going to take. And then there's finishing up the part of Embark screen we haven't shown you because it's not done, is the part where you actually situate your fortress on the map. That needs to be changed, and that also has the most kind of egregious Dwarf Fortress key cluster that everyone knows about, like the UHJK thing or whatever it is, to resize the many rectangles, like move and resize the rectangle with your like various clusters or whatever. It's just ridiculous. So imagine just being able to like click, drag or something. But that needs to be done. I need to retool World Gen so that's a little more player friendly. Instead of dumping into the title screen, I've talked about that in the past. Then there's thinking about the other modes. Adventure mode, like a lot of the graphics comes along for the ride, but very little of the interface does.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we got to do there. That's kind of like we want to finish the dwarf stuff first, and then that takes X amount of time, and Legends mode takes X amount of time. Legends mode shouldn't take that long, but we have said that well, what about hyperlinks and so forth? We've made some progress already on that because I had to rewrite one of the text paragraph things to support kind of internal little color words, and the same method could be used to create hyperlinks. So I think we're actually in good shape on hyperlinks now.
Ooh.
So that should be doable in Legends mode. And it was weird. I had written that for some completely bizarre purpose. I forgot. It was for like descriptions of performance types that you can do when you're an adventurer. I had this little paragraph thing written a few years ago that happens to have the same structure you need to support hyperlinks. It was just strange, but I was lucky I found that, so I didn't have to rewrite it. Yeah, so that's that's a lot of stuff. I don't want to. I mean, I don't know how to tie a day to that, right? And
Don't.
and hopefully the art stuff can kind of go commensurate with that and not slow down the process particularly. So I'm kind of looking at it. I'm looking at it from just a kind of finish the screens and menus perspective now that we have a lot of the artwork done, and so there's quite a bit to do, and we've also done quite a bit. So it's yeah. I mean, this year would still be fair. Certainly planning to get rid of all of that fort mode stuff I mentioned well before the end of the year.
I mean, if it's out in 22, it's out in 22. If it's out in 23, it's out in 23. It'll come out when it's done, right?
Yeah, sooner rather than later, though. Hopefully, yeah. Really would like to do some of the things that I've been wanting to do for a long time. But yeah,
it'll be out before Star Citizen, so that's what matters.
Well, isn't Star Citizen out now? People are like driving in the subway. Don't you take the subway around? I've seen videos of the subway. I mean, sometimes it works. It's cool.
I've played it. I wouldn't.
Yeah. Did you get in the train?
I didn't get in the train, no, but I did fly around and was very upset by how poor the flight model was.
Well, the train model might be better.
Maybe. We'll see. Maybe I'll reinstall.
That's really. I mean, I literally don't know much about it. I know I saw someone in a train. That's all I know about it. So I was like, train seems done. Train's cool.
Yeah. They have a planet, I know that much, with a city on it. But there are quite a few games that have taken a lot of inspiration from Dwarf Fortress. While working on new UI and design, is there any games that you've used as inspiration for UI changes?
I mean, we've played a lot of games. I mean, it's just kind of random. The things we'll be playing, because Zach will be playing some like. God, what was the last one he was playing? Was it the hospital game? One of those hospital games.
Project Hospital, or
I think it was Project Hospital.
Okay.
And I don't remember if we were thinking about the tabs on the sides of the unit thing when we saw that, because that's something kind of similar for when you like click a room full of doctors. Mm-hmm. You can see the different doctors' faces and stuff. So it's just things like that, kind of like not kind of trying to kind of uniformly take from one project or another, but yeah, I mean, it's not anybody's professional kind of capacity on the team, so we're just kind of dealing with it.
UI design is hard.
Yeah, it's a profession, is what it is. Professional UX designer, senior UX designer, lead UX designer, UX lead, and we're not any of those. But that's what it means to be a small independent developer.
So another question that I kind of saw on repeat a couple times, and I think I know the answer to this one, but once the Steam version is out and Classic also exists, will it be possible to move saves back and forth between Classic and Steam?
Yeah, I don't anticipate any obstacles to that. Like the normal, I like right now in your saves, it saves all of the graphics in the folder every time and stuff, and that's got to go, right? Just because of how the Steam version will be, right? That you can't just like put the graphics in there. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
So the saves should be slightly more lightweight, although the main bulk of the weight is still the world and the history and stuff. But in the forts are the heavier chunks of the saves. So the saves aren't going to like get super small or anything. But but they should be kind of agnostic as to the kind of graphical setup, and so you can just move them back and forth.
And another question about visuals and graphics here. Will the order you equip armor and clothing in adventure mode have an effect on the visuals of the sprite, like equipping chainmail before equipping a tunic, and the tunic will appear on top, or vice versa?
So it doesn't do that right now, and I don't remember if there are any issues with doing that, because some of the art was set up so that the sleeves and things would look better if they were over a pauldron, or so the beard would poke out of the helmet and that kind of thing. And there might be some issues. I mean, I think they're all complete pictures though, because really, I mean, the issue is like if you are completely like chopping one of the pictures in half or something. But I don't think we are. So I don't think there's a huge issue with that. We don't have a particular plan there. It is a little annoying probably to go into the because there's layers. There's like I don't know, there's like 600 layers now for printing a dwarf, where it like says, do you have a tunic on? If you have a tunic on, then print the over your legs. We have to print this little bottom of the shirt sprite. And when it queries the items, it doesn't currently query the order. It simply says, do I want to print this thing or not? So we'd need to kind of have a thing in there that says, well, now the order matters, and we're going to shift the order of these layers. And that might present obstacles that make it not worth it on a first pass, but it's certainly something that would kind of we'd be able to take a suggestion and figure out how to do it.
Another question I have about the Steam version, it comes in from Mary, and they say, will artifacts in the Steam release have the same treatment as procedural creatures? Will they have unique visuals that are incorporated into the art's descriptions?
So we have that thing where, for instance, you've seen with the tables, they have the bands and hanging chains and all that kind of thing. Like, it's done for everything. Yep. It's not just done for artifacts, except artifacts, as I recollect, have a sort of higher quality picture. Okay. But because the material and chains and images and stuff are already shown, it's kind of hard to say, like, well, then what? What other thing do we do? Would we just have, like, several variants for what an artifact table looks like so that it can have more unique pictures, which was an idea we floated out there, and we're like, well, we got other things to draw, Yeah. And but that's certainly kind of a candidate for the future. The same we've done variants on a few of the beds, for instance, have 4 variants. Well, I think all of them have. Well, in any case, the beds have, say, 4 variants, and right now that's kind of independent of everything. It's like you have quality 2, you have this 2, but you have the just plain variants for to break up the image a bit, and like the image of your fort. And if there were additional variants for artifacts, that would make sense. But right now it just relies on like if you have like hanging, like, I don't even know, chrysoprase or however you pronounce any of these damn things, I don't know, off of your, like, links off of your artifact bed, they'll be there. So you'll be able to recognize it that way. So hopefully that's something.
So the kind of last question I have about the Steam version specifically is one that I saw a whole lot. And the last time I asked this question, the response was you hadn't started working on it again. So that might be the response again. But have you looked into Steam Workshop related stuff at all? And any idea what kind of support you will have with Steam Workshop?
Nope, still at the same exact spot that we were. Yep.
I figured someone might try and assassinate me if I didn't ask that one.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. You can ask me every day, and the answer will change someday.
Eventually. But now I'm on to a little bit more general Dwarf Fortress related stuff, and people seem to miss flamingos and mammoths. Are you ever going to add flamingos and mammoths to the game?
So now the flamingo, I'm kind of, I wonder, because I can never find the list during the animal sponsorship drive of animals that was like the total list, not just the accepted ones. That's a list we obviously still have because those went in the game, but the list of like the other 200 that weren't picked. And I don't remember if flamingos were there, right? Because if they were there and they weren't picked, then you don't have me to blame for that. You have the community to blame for not putting in the flamingos. But if I forgot to put them in the list, which is obviously possible because there's so many animals on Earth, then it's my fault, right? Because people would have obviously picked flamingos. So then we wonder, like, okay, so what is the process now for getting other like animals in the game? And we don't have one because we did such a kind of half-assed job on the 200 people animals that were sponsored. Like, obviously the bees didn't get a half-assed job because they were the most popular one, and a few of the others, but not. I mean, we don't have like I don't know, the Bushmaster or something, just not Bushmastery at all. I'm not even sure what it needs, but it doesn't have it. And that's true of like the Golden Lion Tamarin. I mean, the Golden Lion Tamarin, maybe we just have regular Lion Tamarins. I don't remember if we distinguish between the Golden Lion Tamarin and the Lion Tamarin in the
I don't believe
the
I've ever
raws there.
seen one.
Yeah, well, it's because I think they might. Are they vermin sized or not? I don't remember how we treat because they're very small, right? These are very small monkeys, and I don't
Yeah.
recall if they're vermin sized or if they're treated like a because the one where we cut the corners there was the KV because the guinea pig because we've had pet guinea pigs and we're like, well, it's not going to be vermin sized. They're fat. They're like little chunks, so it gets to have a whole body. And that's
Like
cheating,
rabbits.
obviously. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's deeply silly because they are, small creatures. We've also had pet rats, and those are vermin. But how could rats not be vermin, even if you had a pet rat? You recognize its like wire eating capabilities, and yeah. So yeah, the it looks like the lion tamarin has a full. No, it's a vermin grounder. There you go. Okay, so that's proper. It's like a squirrel. It's like a little monkey, little teeny monkey, and it's not golden. It's just the regular lion tamarin. And the only reason I remember the golden lion tamers, I believe they have those at one of the nearby zoos. I don't remember if it's Point Defiance or Woodland Park. I had the golden lion tamarin. Last time we went there, they were doing the enrichment activity. There were like 3 of them playing with a little box that had food in it and different little nooks and crannies. It was fun to watch them play around with it. But that's the exact type of thing we don't have in the game, right? The golden lion tamarin just chills, moves around like a little dot. And well, it's not a dot anymore. That's that. At least blessedly, we have an image of a golden lion tamarin or regular lion tamarin. And so that's the thing. Like, you can add a flamingo, or you can make a better lion tamarin. And we're torn there now for the mammoth. Like these kind of the whole kind of group of prehistoric creatures. I mean, we had been flirting at some point of like. I mean, we don't really need to do a sponsorship drive anymore, but it might be funny just to have like the prehistoric creature sponsorship drive, right? Yeah. And then if you enable your world to have these creatures, then you can have anything from the kind of mammoth, kind of saber-toothed critters to the ones that are a little earlier and scarier. I remember there's kind of some kind of big wolfy bear-looking thing that was 8 times the size of a grizzly bear or something. Not 8 times as long, but like 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, so like big, right? Just in double the dimensions, a big old critter, and that's scary. And then there's also dinosaurs, of course, right? But then you can also then you're wondering like, well, those are the popular ones, but what about like the Cambrian explosion? Well, the problem is a lot of that's in the ocean, and the oceans just aren't interesting right now. But it would be really funny to have some of those critters because those things look amazing. All kinds of strange creatures with weird like vacuum extension mouth parts and. Yeah, so there's like there's a possibility for that kind of thing if the mood strikes in the future. But that's kind of the reason we don't have mammoths is because it seemed like part of a piece.
Wow. I mean, I'm just imagining like giant feathered dinosaurs in Dwarf Fortress now and getting a little afraid.
Well, we can have those as forgotten beasts already, right?
Yeah.
But they end with feathers, but it's not the same. Yeah. It's not the same as having like, and that's also a question, right? I mean, are we going to have the partisans, the people that still think that a lot of those animals didn't have feathers? Because we'd put them in with feathers. You want a Tyrannosaurus? I mean, who knows if the Tyrannosaurus has like a giant cockatoo crest, or if it's more like an elephant where the feathers are hardly there, they're just like occasionally like a little thing sticking out, just because it's large and it needs to radiate. Heat, but I don't know what the latest thinking is on that, or if they found any fossils that have any impressions at all for the Tyrannosaurus specifically. Not that anyone should care about a Tyrannosaurus compared to the other ones. There's all kinds of other ones, and they definitely have feathers, big old feathers.
Yeah, I just love the image of like a giant feathery T-Rex just flying around. But I've got another kind of potentially fun question. This one comes in from Stone, and he says, why do domestic animals not have giant and man variants?
So we were thinking that the domestication process occurred. So it depends on if you think that the domestication process occurred or not in the kind of prehistory or whatever excuse we have for having like a couple hundred people existing in a village at the beginning of year 1, right? And it's one of those things that we're now kind of pushing off to the myth release. Like, we'll have to explain why there are domestic creatures and so forth, and we also have to explain why they're animal people. And we can kind of consider those as things that like one was kind of more primordial than the other. And what would the kind of animal person think when you've taken its its non-animal person, analog and then domesticated it? I wonder if they have an opinion about that. But that's the reason that was the way it was. We were just kind of thinking of them as non-natural creatures in some sense.
So once a creature's been domesticated, then it can't evolve to be a giant scary monster version of that then, I guess.
Well, it depends on where you thought the animal people came from. I mean, we had one three-toe story that has a particular, I think, squirrel person or something, kind of be picked and evolved into it by some kind of forest spirit. So, like, maybe, well, now this gets you to the point where you're like, well, do the hogs go out in the forest to get like acorns and stuff, right? When you want to feed them, sometimes people just kind of let them out into the wasteland or whatever, and they eat what they please. And we have that little wasteland section kind of in the villages. They keep in when it generates them, it keeps a section that's not kind of turned into fields and stuff. And that presumably that was for the pigs to be freed and run around. Now, if there's free pigs running around in some wilderness area that's connected to the area where a forest spirit operates, then maybe we will have some pig people.
The next question that I have here comes in from Jamie, and they say, isn't rain just a really big waterfall?
It certainly doesn't act that way. I mean, in the previous versions, it made you more depressed, and a waterfall mist didn't. I mean, I'm not sure what this is. This is an argument for. We don't have mist, really, right? We have fog that comes up, but not like you don't feel the mist the same way that you do. So I think we're missing. There's kind of a missing link here with how fog operates and what rain is and how the waterfall mist works.
I mean, definitely hiking up in the mountains in British Columbia up here when it's raining, like when it kind of comes through the evergreen forest, it certainly turns into a more of a mist and less of a drip.
Yeah. No, it's similar here, like in the rainforests on the Olympic Peninsula and stuff. Yeah, I mean, and it makes you disappointed in the fog too, the way it can kind of come up the ravines and through the trees and stuff. How it in Dwarf Fortress, it's just like your vision is impaired. Like, good job. But volumetric fog is something that we'll save that for the Unreal 5 engine or something. But we're doing our best.
I'm looking forward to the Unreal Engine port of Dwarf Fortress. The next one I got here comes in from Tobiter, and and they have to say, have you ever considered making Legends mode information available in normal play, or is something preventing you from doing so?
The original way the game worked, it actually hid a lot of the historical events, and you were supposed to discover them and stuff. And that kind of carried through to how Dwarf mode worked. As we were thinking, like, oh, well, you don't want to see a historical event about an army leaving to march for your fortress, because you can just pull it up in a menu. So there'd obviously have to be some kind of controls on that, on how that information gets spread. But there's also this thing that works in the rumor system and so forth that makes every historical event above a certain age, I don't remember if it's like 1 or 5 or something years or something, then just becomes public knowledge, even though it shouldn't in some cases, especially now that we've got plots and things, but also things like who's a vampire and what identities they've assumed and that kind of thing. But you would be able to see the general historical information. There's not really a problem with that. So that kind of thing, we've sort of been, we just haven't found a time to put in a button you can press to look that stuff up. There's some smaller obstacles, like when you start Legends mode, you see that part where it kind of classifies everything. That's necessary to just make it work. And so if you can pull up some kind of encyclopedia or something during regular play, then you'd have to eat some portion of that process as well.
Okay.
But yeah, no significant obstacles though.
The next question I have sitting here is one of those questions that's almost as old as time itself, but they say that this comes in from Anton, and they say that they've been playing video games for 35 years, and nothing is more important than performance. Performance is so important when playing a long game on a big world map or a big region. The games always end with FPS death, or painfully slow to play. When can we expect / hope to see Dwarf Fortress use modern technology for performance for longer gaming sessions?
So, I mean, I've been making improvements, as people have noted, that it doesn't get slower, even when it gets complicated. There's improvements; it gets a little faster, and like then you've got to tell me specifically what you're talking about after that point. Like, what is modern technology? Is this another multi-threading question? I mean, the ship has kind of sailed on that in one hand, and on the other hand, in the Steam version, just like in up until now, the graphics runs on a separate thread, and that's it's good. People have given me pointers on how I might use micro threading and things. I have some code for that now and so forth. But the big ticket issues aren't really going to be helped too much by that. And big ticket issues are mainly things like there are 100,000 stones in your fortress because you dug them. Good job. And now it has to think about stockpiles. There's already a complicated system in place to make it not think that much about stockpiles. But at some point, everything is overwhelmed because people just like digging. And that's an issue that requires the objects to be deleted, I think. There's no other way around it. And then we need to decide, okay, how are objects deleted, and so forth. I mean, the games that have good performance don't have systems like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's just not a billion little pieces of crap hanging around, right? Or they have like some people who are dedicated to working on them. I mean, like as far as I know, games like Factorio have good performance when they have lots of crap running around on little belts and things. I mean, they work in very specific ways, though, right? It's not. I mean, I don't know what the performance is like on Factorio when you get 50,000 logistic robots running around thinking about things, for instance. Like when it starts, it's got to break at some point, and I don't know when. And I don't know what comes into play there, right?
I think that it's almost more of a tutorialization issue. I mean, ClinoDev just kind of mentioned it in chat. I've mentioned earlier, I have a fortress that's been running for 154 years now. And my frame rate is above 50 and perfectly playable, except for when 50 ravens decide to dive bomb my dwarves and their pathing gets a little messy. But outside of that, it's perfectly playable. And I think it's almost more of a people just kind of hoard and stockpile things, and people kind of channel their inner hoarder, and it just becomes this almost snowball effect of just kind of, as you said, items just stacking on items, stacking on items, stacking on items. And I wonder if it's almost more of a tutorialization issue and less of a actual game performance issue at that point. But
yeah, I mean, well, it's tutorials and tools, right? I mean, if the tutorial just says use some kind of squishing device or however people deal with their atom smashing or whatever I don't know what the modern player methods are for dealing with item amounts, but yeah, that's so it hasn't changed. And if that's part of a tutorial, that more speaks to a failure of game systems and stuff.
Yeah,
because I think that's a stupid thing to tutorialize just from the perspective of the game looks bad. If you're smash things under a bridge, you got to do it. There should be some other things like setting fires for the appropriate type of items and stuff, but at the same time, it's also demanding a certain amount of player effort toward that, where the cost is not some kind of loss where your dwarves go crazy or something, but it's a loss through the slow grinding FPS death because they didn't do a thing, which, I mean, it's all just kind of a bad look.
Yeah.
So hopefully that can be improved in some fashion beyond that. But that's, yeah, I mean, if I address the problem, it's not, I don't think it's a modern technology problem so much as it's that problem. I mean, there are other issues with frame rate, but the items are the worst.
I mean, another really good example is Cities Skylines. That game is just kind of a matter of time before you just have too many buildings and too many cars moving and everything just kind of falls over. And that's a game that runs on a modern engine that has multi-threading. So I it's such a tricky problem because there's kind of no other games that are trying to have as much physics and as much tracking going on with as much detail as this one. So, but in regards to things being incredibly specific, why do stranglers only appear in evil, tropical, moist, broadleaf forests?
So I mean so moist tropical broadleaf forest is just a proxy for, I mean, that's just the jungle, right? We don't have like the rainforest, the tropical rainforest, where so they're just they're we just imagined them there when we drew them, when we had this tablet we know it's at my parents' place, this tablet that has the pictures of all of those creatures that we drew, and we just kind of had them like running around in trees with their weird shark mouths and all their arms and things and their eyes, and it was just like this was just supposed to be some kind of threat in those areas, even though, I mean, it doesn't. This was, I believe, I may be wrong about this, I believe this was before we added all the animals too, like the zillion animals, and that kind of dilutes the effect of things like ice wolves and stuff like that. You're like, who cares about like these few random little but they're not randomized, right? They're just these sort of stock creatures. When the wildlife is so much more interesting, we haven't really done much with them, and it's all just kind of disappointing, I think, how it played out. We'll have to do a better job.
At some point, I need to go on a quest to find a strangler because I've never actually seen one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I never like often test embark in evil places. You'd have to play a very specific type of game to see one, and it would have to be selected, which I don't remember what the chances are of that. And it would have to be, because it would have to be like a not dead play. Although you might see like skeletal stranglers before you see regular ones.
That's almost cooler in a way.
Yeah, zombie stranglers. I don't know how much strangling they do with those teeth, but yeah, we did our best.
So this next question comes in from a plump helmet man, and they say,
"Sounds cool.
I have long looked at games as works of art. Dwarf Fortress has many facets to its gameplay, and they all come together in such an artful way. Do you consider your work art, or is it more technical for you as the creator?"
I mean, I don't like using words without context. I mean, I certainly think it has all of the hallmarks of art and tech.
Yep.
It's one of them things. I mean, I'm not going to argue with the museum, so like,
Fair.
Paula Antonelli made a good case for it being art, and I agreed with her when I watched her talk about it. So we'll take the curator's word for it. I certainly am not like conversant. Like, I wouldn't be able to have an interesting conversation with her about it. So, I mean, you wouldn't want to take my word for it. But I don't feel like I'm solving a technical problem when I'm working on it most of the time. Like especially when we're designing and thinking about it. I mean, that's just doesn't feel the same way. I mean, it all blurs together, of course, but if you're like, how do I evoke an emergent narrative and make people care about that kind of thing? I mean, that's the questions have technical answers, but they're the same is true of like painting and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's different.
So now I have I got a bunch of questions that were very heavily related to myths and magics things, so kind of the future, I guess. And this is one that comes in from the king of the nerds, and they say, what is something you are not looking forward to figuring out how to make work for the magic update?
Oh, well, I mean, it all, because of the subject matter, I think we have to accept that it's all kind of fun.
Yeah.
that it's not the same as like, positioning my 20th scroll bar or whatever, right? It's not the same as what I'm doing now. But I think some of the logic for making, like, if dwarves have to fill up their little, like, they have to grease their runes properly or something, right? They have to go and like dip them in fat over at the kitchen. before they put them in their little pouch or something. Like if there's some rule like that, like just sort of building the framework that gets the jobs to work and then to work quickly. Like there's a lot of things about the framework now that are not specific that works with like the job auction system that's kind of hidden underneath to make the dwarves pick their jobs and do things. But as we've seen with the military equipment stuff, like it can be really messy. It can be a real pain in the ass, right? To get that working and to do interface stuff for it. So when you proceduralize that whole thing, there's quite a lot of potential for that to be a pain. And that's one of the things that bugs me. I was thinking about illusions too, like if you had an illusory forest, and you have to think about like the snow falling on trees, like there's real snow falling on illusory trees, and you want to do different effects. Like you want to have, sometimes you want the snow to fall through the trees, and that should give away that they're illusory trees. Sometimes you want the snow to land on the trees, but if you dispel the illusion, then you want the snow to then fall, right? To like be briefly in the air for a second as like a tree-shaped snow covering and then fall to the ground. So that kind of like distinction between like tactile illusions, non-tactile illusions and things. That's all cool. And then you're like, okay, but how am I going to code that in the new map rewrite? Like this is all part of that map rewrite, like the storage of things and how to make it think about things and then to do it quickly, right? Because it needs to, when it's doing like the snowfall code, you don't want the snowfall code to be appreciably slower than it was before. So you need to be able to quickly get at blockage information and things like that. I mean, it's not impossible at all. It's just like one of those things I'll be thinking about.
There's a lot of things from Myths and Magic that I've heard you talk about on, in all of the various places that you either post or talk on, such as DF Talk. And one thing that's come up a number of times is the prototype world generation that you guys have. This question came in a couple times, but this one from Jazz says, there was talk of greater world customization options some time ago, level of violence, magic, and normalcy, etc. Are these options planned for an addition in the Myths and Magic update? If so, will they impact the creations of myths and the world?
Yeah, that's the idea is like, I mean, the person has probably seen those advanced world generation parameters we have now, right? Just kind of pages of things. And so if you clean that up a little bit and add more of them, I mean, we're still planning to allow you to control exactly what you get if you want. So if you want no deities at all, that's fine. It can roll with it. If you want the thing to be like 90% more fire oriented, we had already kind of shown some beginnings of that in the prototype, being able to put in preference numbers and things like that so that you can get myths the kind that you want, or you can just kind of let it ride, but give it sort of guardrails about how dark you want it to be and that kind of thing, which, we have to set up metrics on that, right, within the game that say like, okay, how grim dark is too grim dark and that kind of thing. And that's not necessarily something where you're going to hit the target every single time. But I mean, hopefully we can kind of get in the ballpark of what people want with that. So yeah, I think it goes all the way back to the beginning. The very first creation decision it makes is what is there. There's like 15 options now or something. Like you can have a endless salt flat, or you can have a sea of monsters, or an ocean. Oceans are popular. You can just have an expanse of mud, and that even those choices themselves can be bound between like how violent or how dark or how magical or whatever is this setting. Right, you'd cut Sea of Monsters out of the most placid settings, for instance, and it's yeah. So and then you can just go from there.
And now I want to see what a sea of monsters is going to look like.
Well, that's another, yeah, that's the other interesting thing is like how early can you stop this process and just go, right? And before you have a map, before you have anything, it gets tricky. But should it just like well, here's a kind of map, and if you want to be whatever, like the primordial spirit going around and petting the monsters, that's kind of like Stardew Valley or Pokemon or something.
Or it doesn't even let you embark and just lets you read about it. Even.
Yeah, and it's just like there is a sea of monsters. The end.
Yeah.
It doesn't take very long to load that world. That's a plus.
Yeah, I mean that can be a bonus. Now, someone here is asking about alongside of the magic update, will there be more fantastical abilities for dwarves, such as crafting steel men or stone golems, similar to how necromancers can create artificial races?
So yeah, we're hoping to have dwarf inflected powers in the most kind of vanilla settings would be either nothing or a little bit of that runey geomancy golem type stuff, right? Those are the typical, because we're not trying to in the default setting, we're not trying to blow any minds in or anything, right? I mean, it's just supposed to be like, what is the cheapest fantasy crap you can think of, right? And that involves dwarves doing those things like units from RTS games, right? That kind of thing. And yeah, it's not too hard to imagine having a workshop where you can bring some rocks and bring some other ingredients and get to hard artisanal work making not an exceptional but a finely crafted golem. Not a great job, but it's a dwarfy. They did their job well, and then it can just start wandering around. Stand someplace you tell it to stand forever. Connect it to a pressure plate trap, and then it activates, and then you can have the statues come alive. People want statues to come alive; they can come alive.
Could make an endless lever puller, and we'll finally have a replacement for vampires.
Yeah, until you have to go replace their little battery.
Oh yeah. I've played Caves of Blood. I know how cells work.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I still haven't played since whenever I last played. They're not done with the story yet, so it'll be a little while.
Wonderful game.
Like I'm allowed to play again. I don't think they even had the water ritual last time. That was around the time I stopped.
Oh wow, it's been a while.
Yeah, because I finished the story, right, that they had gotten to up to that point, and I was like, well, it's funny because I know them, fairly well, I guess, and so playing their game is it's fun, it's cool, and but at the same time, it's just the typical relationship one has with an early access title, right? It's like you play it and then you have to set it down for a while until it gets to the next part, and I never know when that is or whatever, so usually I just wait for them to release, and that set me up in a particular spiral with Caves of Good.
They'll get there eventually, like everything else, right?
Yeah, they were pretty close. They got the tomb done.
So we're kind of coming close-ish to the end of my list of questions here, but I've got a few, just a handful more. This one comes in from Silvershee, and they say, is there a potential for half-elves or half-dwarves in future updates such as Magic?
Yeah, I remember talking about this just recently. It's one of the two difficult problems. There's the Centaur problem, which is the same as like the Chimera problem, and the same as the Manticore problem, the same as the mix and match creatures. And that's a closely related problem to the half critter problem, where it's less mix and match, although you could do it that way, and more blending, right? We want to blend, we want to mix and match, we want to be able to do these things, and that requires rethinking, kind of in a similar way to this discussion we were having about the adventure mode character creator, right? Making all of that stuff play nice, so that appearances of creatures and the pieces they're made out of can be thought of a little bit differently. The materials they're made out of, which is kind of the annoying part of the centaur problem, because it's like, does a centaur have like horse meat and human meat? Like, if you were to butcher one,
Human meat.
yeah, or is it like all one kind of meat? What about right where they connect at the waist? Does like the meat just do a meat swap, or is there like blended meats? And same with the hair, all that kind of thing.
Yep.
Like it starts. You don't want to duplicate information. Like and plus, like, it doesn't even answer the question yet, because like on the horse part of the centaur, like if you plucked a hair, does that count as a horse hair? Like an actual horse hair, or is that like a centaur horse hair? Do they have the same material definition? Do they have the same like properties if you were to put them under a microscope, which Dwarf Fortress often does when it sets things on fire and does other things with them? So it's like, and would they count for like spell purposes the same way? All that kind of thing, because we have to take memory to have the different material specifiers. And so for the centaur problem, you'd like on one hand to use the horse materials, which we can do, and some creatures have that, like when you I believe like things like the amethyst people that you can find underground are made out of amethyst rather than a meat that resembles amethyst, right? And so you can use other materials from other parts of the game. You can even use other creature materials from other parts of the game. I don't recall if we did that or not, but it's supported, as well as it may be supported. The modders know more about that than I do at this point. But if you made the centaur out of those meats from the other creatures, then you're saving a lot of memory. But that means defining the splits in a kind of annoying way. You need to be careful, and it makes the raw definition sort of cumbersome. What we'd really like to do is just be like, take the scissors, chop the human here, chop the horse here, define some kind of like text file gluing function that just says like, hey, glue these two things together, import everything you need. The definition of the creature is actually really small. And then that allows you to go into Forgotten Beast land and Procedural Critter land and just start mixing and matching and doing all kinds of crazy crab-armed people and shit. Yeah.
Something that like is just popping into my head now is, wouldn't centaurs be half intelligent, so dwarves would only butcher half of them?
You know, that opens up, I'm sure, a number of ethical questions about bodily autonomy and how much of the centaur can claim the rest of its body. I'm sure it can control its legs, right? Yeah. I mean, is its leg really any less intelligent than my leg, which doesn't think very much at all? I'm assuming its legs are smarter than mine because they have to deal with more crap.
Yeah, more coordination.
Yeah, my legs just kind of chill out and mostly do nothing. So I think you definitely have to consider the wholeness of the centaur as an autonomous being and respect its agency.
And bouncing off of chat here, like a centaur is more than 50% horse though, because you're only removing the horse from the neck up. So it's like more like 80% of a horse and then like 50% of a human. So it's actually like 130% animal. Anyway.
No, yeah, there's quite a bit of horse to it. This is for sure.
It's a horsey subject, that's for sure. The next question I have here is a very broad one. But it comes in from Prophet, and it is, if you're allowed to dream, how does Dwarf Fortress look in 10, 15, 20 years?
So, well, the graphics are nice, aren't they?
Yeah.
We can already see it. Yeah, it looks nice. We've got like all kinds of weird places you can go, weird things you can see. Just slap in the kind of world viewer mode thing, which we already have for debug, and we want to kind of bring out at some point during the myth thing. You can just kind of survey the strange places, yeah, I mean it's I think that's kind of one of the big fascinating things for me, is to just kind of and then set it to run. There's not going to be, in that amount of time, there's no way we can get kind of all the little AIs up and running in the cities and things, right? It's like this thing that we had before where we had the schedules, they didn't really work, and we had to do those like magically refilling meat barrels and that kind of stuff. Like, I don't think we'll quite be to the point, and maybe the project at this point, since we're all aged people in the middle of multiple pandemics and fascist violence and shit, that maybe we won't survive. But it's like we're hoping to see a game where you can kind of watch things like that happen and you can participate if you want. I think that's, yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to that.
I mean, I kind of look at stuff that is happening in other games as well, such as like Ultima Ratio Regum, where it's just like, oh, it just generates you a world that you can wander around in. And I look at bits and pieces of that and I'm like, man, I wish we could just like pick up a piece of this game and plop it in Dwarf Fortress, pick up a piece of this game and plop it into Dwarf Fortress, like take the kingdom management from this and put it in there. And then it's just like, it's all done. But unfortunately, that's not how coding works. So
yeah, no, they just don't play that nice together. Yeah. I mean, it would be a big project, but it'd be cool to get there.
Yeah.
Get some piece of there and release what source code we can and see what happens after that. And then the machines will do it. And then they won't need us anymore. What are you doing, bud? You're causing trouble. You're just sitting right on the modem. Modem's sitting ways.
I think we need to give Scamps his own modem.
Yes, the old computer wasn't enough for him. He's moved on to IT. What are you doing there?
Just give him a server rack. It'll be fine.
That's right. What I'm going to do is give him a big pat on the head. What are you doing? Causing trouble in the home. Little boatman is a little bit more. What are you doing? Just nothing but trouble every day. Every single day. Every single day. Got a little baby man causing trouble in the home. He's doing his best. It's rarely good enough, but that's all right.
So I kind of have two sort of closing questions here, but Brahms just pops up with one in the chat that I'm just going to snipe real quickly because I was just thinking about it myself. Are there any plans to allow us to treat animals in hospitals?
So the whole like veterinary medicine and the fact that there's some kind of like animal caretaker skill or something that I don't remember if it gets used at all. Yeah, I mean there's no scheduled plan for that. That's certainly I feel a little weird if it beat the orphanages. But maybe that's all this game has ever had planned for us. We almost got the orphanages into 4705. Then there was one hiccup and babies still crawl into lava unattended.
I've never actually had that happen. I have had them crawl off of like a 25 Z level wall, but I've never had them fall into lava specifically.
They'll do it. They don't care. They don't care at all. Yeah, so I mean, I'd like the first dwarf that sees an unattended child to snatch it up and perhaps adopt it immediately. But if not, then bring it to some place you've designated and someone can adopt it. And then the baby will be safe. You really have to just get them through year one, right? I mean, once they're two, for some reason, dwarves are very practical. I guess they learn at age 2 not to jump into the lava, or age 1, really, right? Age 1 year and change. However they grow up. Yeah, which is amazing because I think isn't a 1-year-old more equipped to run into lava than a 0-year-old?
Well, can 0-year-olds even move on their own, really? Like,
not really.
They
can't
it takes
get a long time.
Prone, so they mostly stay prone. So I guess you'd need like both parents to be dead, and you'd need baby to be completely unattended, and then you'd need access to lava, and then you would need it to happen to crawl in the general direction of lava, and then crawl over the edge. So all of these are like a lot of different things that need to happen.
Yeah. So I mean, the game does need some adjustment in terms of the mobility of the babies, and when is a baby considered a baby versus a toddler and that kind of thing. But higher priority is just getting the children taken care of, and then we can get the animals taken care of.
Yes. Well,
it's very sad. It's a very sad game. Things are just left to die.
One thing at a time. On the topic of things that aren't sad and some little bit less serious questions here. If you were to play a character in Lord of the Rings, who would you play?
No, what is the verb play doing here?
If there was a reimagining of the books specifically, maybe in a film format or an animated format.
Oh, okay.
If you were to play a character, who would you be in Lord of the Rings?
who am I qualified to be? But like fucking yeah, some schmuck sitting in the tavern or something.
Tom Bombadil.
Oh dear, I can't sing. It's like I love Goldberry or whatever her name is. I've got yellow boots. Yeah, yeah, I'm working on it. Working on it.
Or you could
I
do
couldn't be Barleyman Butterbur or whatever his name is because I'm not I can't handle that many people. You know, that's a lot of people to be cheerful around.
I've always wanted a TV show centered around Radagast. Just going around, mushrooms in his beard, being weird.
Yeah, because I could do that. I don't think I take enough drugs though.
Eh,
You gotta be on a little bit of acid or something to be Radagast. I think, well, mushrooms obviously, but like
yeah.
it's yeah. No, I haven't been there, so I don't feel like it would be fair for me to be Radagast.
Now,
Plus, anyone who calls themselves a wizard is running a little bit of an ego trip on themselves.
well,
Oh, yeah, I'd be Gandalf, obviously.
I'm sure we could all be wizards if we try hard enough in the virtual world.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
That's how it works. That's why we have dreams. But yeah. I mean, hobbits eat all the time. I'm pretty good at that.
Seems like a good way to retire.
Too tall to be a hobbit, though. Although they have amazing technology these days.
Yeah, but are the hobbits really that short, or is everybody else just really tall?
Do they ever answer that question? I don't know do they have a form of measurement at all that they talk about? This is one of those annoying things we had to deal with in Dwarf Fortress, right? Is like what is measurement, and we just have that weird kilogram symbol. We're like, we don't talk about what this is, and we didn't do height at all. I mean, when Zach is writing his stories, he just talks about spans. You know, is this many spans tall? It doesn't give a crap what they are. It's different every story. So yeah, I'm not sure we'll have to deal with that because it'd be very. I mean, it's one of the things that's like it's known sort of within the game, like how relatively tall people are in some way, but it doesn't say what that means. It doesn't try and interpret it. Everything's kind of relative within a given creature type. Like, so, but yeah, and it'd be beneficial to go over to some metrics probably.
I just kind of take Krug Smash's art as canon at this point.
Yeah, I like all the art. We got various canons. Various different people's interpretations are all good.
Now, this is kind of the final question I have for this round, which is kind of a heartfelt request from myself and Eric Shadowblade over on YouTube and kind of most of the people who watch my streams, which is, can we please get the debug creature put into the game as some sort of Easter egg, immortal god, something? Can we keep that guy around? Because we all really like him.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be a shame if the debug creature didn't live on. It's like, I mean, the Gorlak already fills part of its niche, I think, but like it's obviously not the same kind of creature as a Gorlak. It has a different attitude. It has its own attitude.
What about like some form of like Microsoft Clippy, but for Legends?
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, and also we see another thing that we didn't discuss when we were talking about the timeline of Dwarf Fortress release is also like what kind of guiding or tutorialization is sort of the, you know, what should we do? How much should we do? It's important to do some because the game is inscrutable, even with buttons and things. So, what if the debug creature were to teach you how to build a workshop? But does it look like it gives a fuck? I don't know.
Does Clippy?
I don't. Well, the Clippy cares too much, I think.
Yeah.
Clippy's a busybody. Clippy gets into your crap. I don't remember if I was supposed to say the F word on your stream or not.
I swear all the time, so it's
okay. That's good. That's good.
We are rated as a mature viewing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's always an interesting word, isn't it? But it's usually the less mature stuff that gets marked that way, including me. So like, I mean, yeah. I just don't see, but I don't see the debug creature caring about your problems at all. But that's fine. I mean, the debug creature could show up when you do something wrong.
True.
But,
It's like a scolding kind of teacher figure.
yeah, it doesn't need to scold. It can be disappointed.
True.
But
it does kind of have that face of eternal just unimpressedness.
Yeah, it's somewhat grumpy. It's a good creature, though. I agree. It's an important piece of work. And I mean, Mike drew that. We may have let Mike have a bit of a say. And if Mike wants to use that as an icon in the credits for themselves, then that's fair. But I mean, I think it deserves a broader life.
I think at this point I've taken an hour and 20 minutes of your time, and I guess I just kind of want to say thank you very much for taking the time to come and talk with me and listen to the mountains of questions that I get dumped on. Like I had 190 last night, and I cut it down to a relatively reasonable, like hour and a half, I think.
That's pretty good. Yeah. No, I don't envy you the task. That's the task for sure.
It's a lot of doubles, so it's not too bad. It's delete, 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 and then kind of work down from there. But it really means a lot that you take the time to come and chat with us and hang out with me in my Twitch chat, and I think it kind of goes the same for everybody out in chat. Like, everybody loves listening to you talk about the game that you make. So I think I'm gonna kind of take us out here, and thank you very much for spending some time with us once again.
Yeah, no problem. Always delightful. The cat is still sitting on the modem, but he's very meditative now.
He hasn't pulled the plug, so he's doing good.
Yeah, no, he's chilled out. He must have been having a moment earlier. Well, he was. I was there for it.
I mean, I think we started with a very loud crash, which I think is perfectly fit.
Yeah, because he grabs the modem and starts kicking it with his feet, and sometimes that launches him wherever. Yes, there's lots of things to knock on the ground. He's very happy about that.
But yeah, I think with that, it's time for us to take out. So chat, I will see you guys in a couple of minutes, and thank you very much for joining us, Tarn. Well, you've made it to the end. Thank you very much for sticking around through this whole thing. Once again, I just wanted to say a very big shout out to everybody who submitted questions. If your question didn't get read, apologies. I did everything I could. There was 191 questions submitted from various forums and places, and I only was able to ask about 30-ish odd questions. I haven't actually counted. But thank you very much to everybody who stuck around and everybody who did submit a question. If your question got read out on air, thumbs up. And seriously, thank you so much to everybody who supports me in this and allows me to do this full-time as a creator on the internet. Dwarf Fortress is an extremely niche game, and it's probably the most well-known out of the games that I do play. So thank you so much to those of you who watch and support me in doing this and allowing me to bring these interviews to you guys. This is kind of the one thing I really do that is my way of kind of giving back, I guess, to the wider Dwarf Fortress community. So thank you so much for allowing me to do this. And if I see you anywhere else on this YouTube channel, that's awesome. If this is just the only thing you ever watch from me, that's fine too. But thank you so much for the support and making it to the end of the video. Please support Bay12 Games on Patreon. Go wishlist a Steam version on Steam. Buy it if it's available by the time you're seeing this interview. And I hope to see you in my live streams. Thank you very much for watching this once again, and I'll see you in the next one.